It is time now for checking the top business news stories, and Kate Moody is here. Hi there, Kate.
Hi, Tom.
Now, after 2 years and two deadly plane crashes, US regulators saying that the Boeing 737 MAX can in fact return to service.
Yeah, those planes have been grounded across the globe, Tom, since March of 2019 after a second accident within 5 months killed a total of 346 people. Now, the crisis has tarnished Boeing's reputation and wiped billions of dollars off its market value. Coupled with the coronavirus pandemic, it's led America's largest single exporter to cut some 30,000 jobs. Orders for more than 1,000 MAX planes have been canceled this year, and demand for new planes has dried up as air travel plummeted this year. Well, Boeing has been working nonstop to try to update the flight control software, which was a contributing factor in both of those crashes. On Wednesday, the Federal Aviation Administration said it had approved the changes after a comprehensive and methodical review process. Take a listen.
I am 100% comfortable with my family flying on it. Now, this doesn't mean that the MAX will immediately take to the skies. We will still have to approve the 737 MAX pilot training program for every U.S. airline operating the MAX.
So the ban in the U.S. officially coming to an end there. U.S. airlines are expected to begin training programs for their pilots, bringing them one step closer to flying the MAX fleet again. International regulators, though, have said they won't necessarily take the FAA's approval as a green light for their carriers as they did in the past, because this safety scandal has also dented the agency's reputation. It was seen as being too close to Boeing itself. Authorities in Canada, Mexico, and the EU are among those who are continuing their own safety reviews. Convincing the public that the planes are now safe to fly on will be yet another battle for Boeing. Well, the news this Wednesday has given a boost to Boeing's shares. They were up as much as 4% earlier before dropping back to trade flat this hour. Still about half of the all-time high, which you can see on that chart there. The all-time high of over $440 was reached on March 1st, 2019. That was just days before the Ethiopian Airlines crash. Well, staying with the airline industry, Norwegian Air has filed for bankruptcy protection after months of financial struggles compounded by the 737 MAX crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. An Irish court will take on the request to restructure its €6 billion debt at the beginning of December. Norwegian's aircraft assets are held in Ireland. The Norwegian government gave the budget airline more than €275 million in emergency aid earlier this year, but refused a plea for more cash last week. Meanwhile, the French government has said it will continue to support Air France-KLM if necessary. A government spokesman was addressing reports that the Franco-Dutch carrier was preparing to ask for a further €6 billion in aid from its two government shareholders and other investors. The airline received nearly €10.5 billion in state-backed bailout funds earlier this year. Let's check in on the day's trading action now. We saw modest gains for the major European indices. The CAC 40 gained around half a percentage point here in Paris. France's telecom sector was flat as it began rolling out the country's first 5G mobile networks. Investors were boosted by news from pharmaceutical giant Pfizer that the coronavirus vaccine it's developing is even more effective than it initially said. We're seeing a volatile session on Wall Street. We've seen the S&P 500 and NASDAQ both turn slightly negative there. The Dow Jones just slightly above the flat line this hour. Vaccine announcements earlier in this week had propelled stocks to new record highs. The Dow Jones is still up 12% for this month alone. Analysts say that the series of positive announcements about a possible vaccine marks a light at the end of the pandemic tunnel for investors.
I certainly think investors have got used to the idea that we've got a vaccine candidate or several vaccine candidates coming down the line. I think the only real unknown is around whether or not we're going to get it by the end of this year or the beginning of next year. So certainly I think the market response initially when the Pfizer news came out just over a week ago, well, I think was much more marked in terms of the market reaction, simply because it came out of almost like a bolt from the blue. The Moderna news wasn't so much of a surprise, because I think once you've got one vaccine candidate, then the thinking is that potentially others are likely to come down the line, and that's certainly proved to be the case. So we have seen a little bit of a pop in markets today, but it's certainly not been in anywhere like the way that it was on the previous two occasions where we've heard vaccine news.
And you can see more of that interview with Michael Hewson in this week's People and Profit, Tom. That'll be airing on Thursday at 4:45 p.m. Paris time.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for that. Kate Moody, our business editor. Thanks a lot.